Good morning. We're going to go ahead and start our presentation. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Interaction of Processes and its Importance to a Successful Audit webinar. My name is Joseph Krolikowski, and I'm the Technical Director of Perry Johnson Registrars. A couple of notes for everyone. All of our participants today are on mute. But we absolutely want to address your questions. So please use the question section on the dashboard. We will take your questions at the conclusion of today's presentation. I'll also share with you that copies of our materials from today will be available for download shortly after we're finished. And this webinar and all other past PJR webinars is available for reviewing shortly after it's finished on our website under previously recorded webinars. Our topics for today, we're going to have a little bit of background information on why this is such an important topic. We're going to review the requirements from both ISO 9001-2008 and ISO 9001-2015 that pertain to identifying processes. We're going to have a look at both what is and what is not a process. And finally, we're going to have some strategies for you on meeting this requirement with minimal change to your existing documentation. Now, back in 2014, Perry Johnson Registrars was given a mandate from the accreditation bodies. We were compelled to start taking a harder line in our assessment of client interaction of processes documentation. Now, PJR is held accountable to a number of requirements, and among those requirements are the items found in ISO 17021, which is currently in its 2015 revision. That standard is a standard that certification bodies are held accountable to. And among the many things that it requires is the following. An audit program for the full certification cycle shall be developed to clearly identify the audit activities required to demonstrate that the client's management system fulfills the requirements for certification. Now, the critical piece of that clause for our discussion today is this business about the client management system. We have to perform our audits, plan our audits, document our audits in such a way that they are reflective of your management system as our client. Now, where that gets difficult is in a situation where we have an interaction of processes that is not quite a good reflection of what the actual processes are. Because we have this mandate to adhere to your system, we have to adhere to whatever we're presented as the interaction of processes, and only the interaction of processes. In the past, some auditors would add process names, or they would clarify process names and things of this nature. We can't do that anymore. We have to stick with whatever we're given as the interaction of processes, or IOP. So what we have been forced to do is, in situations where the interaction of processes document is not effective, not appropriate, we have instructed our auditors to begin issuing nonconformances and to direct the client, the auditee, to improve that IOP so that it is a better reflection of what the actual processes are. Now, in terms of where this requirement comes from in the standard, let's start with ISO 9001-2008. The two clauses that are at play here are 4.1 and 4.2.2. In 4.1a, it states that the organization shall determine the processes that are needed for the quality management system and their application throughout the organization. Additionally, 4.1b says that you need to determine the sequence and interaction of those processes. Then in 4.2.2c, it states that you need to establish and maintain a quality manual that includes a description action between the processes of the quality management system. Now in ISO 9001-2015, this requirement changed just a bit. It still says in 4.4.1 that you need to determine the processes needed for the quality management system. 441B, we still have this requirement that you need to determine the sequence and interaction of your processes, but of course ISO 9001-2015 has eliminated the requirement for a quality manual. However, the requirement to have a demonstration of what your processes are and how they interface with each other, for that we look primarily to 4.4.2, where it states that you need to maintain documented information to support the operation of processes. In other words, we need to confirm that you've determined what these items are, that we have these things in place. Otherwise, how can you possibly support, as they say, the operation of your processes if you don't have a firm grasp of what your processes are? Now, as to what is a process, let's start with the definition as it's presented in ISO 9000, which of course is the fundamentals and vocabulary standard. ISO 9000 defines process in the following way. It is a set of interrelated or interacting activities that use inputs to deliver an intended result. Now, the key aspect of this definition is this phrase, interrelated or interacting activities. Now, this has a couple of effects. It establishes what a process is not, and we must understand that a process is not a single step. It's a series of activities that work in sync and are focused on a shared goal. So keep that in mind, this whole idea that it's not a single step. Now, as to what we've accepted in the past as process designations, obviously your processes are your own to define in terms of what your processes are, but I wanted to share with you some of the more common processes. We have sales. We see sales a lot. Purchasing, production, shipping, design and development, production control. Again, these are for you to define in terms of what are the applicable processes for your quality management system. Another point that I wanted to make is that it's completely okay if what you have are just a handful of core processes. If your system is made up of 4 processes, we see this a lot: sales, purchasing, production, support. It's completely okay for your IOP to reflect a rather simple and straightforward set of named processes, as long as it covers the entirety of your system and as long as those processes reflect the full measure of the applicable standard, then it's considered acceptable. Now, in terms of what is not a process, the IOP documents that get rejected most often are the ones that present steps within a single process. So, for example, if we have these items: create work order, issue production schedule, complete work order, and so forth, are these each individually standalone processes, or are they steps within a process? And of course, the correct way to understand this is that these are steps within a process. When we get an interaction of process document that reflects these types of items and presents these types of items as the processes of the organization, in most cases we're going to be concerned about that and potentially going to be issuing a nonconformance. Now, we recognize that for many of our clients, a lot of careful thought and consideration went into developing the IOP. And we're also very well aware that for many of you, it's disconcerting to be told that something that was accepted time and time again during the audit process is now suddenly unacceptable. That's rather jarring and disconcerting. So we want to share with you that for many of you, all that's really going to be needed are a few tweaks to your existing documentation to meet this requirement in a more effective manner. So what we're going to do today is we're going to review a sample of an interaction of process document, and we're going to apply two key improvements. Now we're going to begin with a review of the raw IOP. Please note this is an example that was developed solely for the purpose of this presentation. It is not reflective of any particular PJR client. Okay, so here's our sample. Now you'll note in this case we have 12 boxes and 2 decision diamonds. Now if this is what we were given, we would immediately start questioning things. We would say, okay, does this company have 12 processes? Is something like purchased items received, is that a process? Order entered into mainframe system, is that a process? Do each of these processes have measures of effectiveness? Do each of these processes have controls associated with them? And so forth. So we would have some serious concerns about this as a reflection of what the processes are for this organization. So our first improvement, we're going to identify support processes. Now some of the IOP documents that get rejected don't have any particular place to reflect what the support processes are. Now, first of all, it's important for you to note that neither ISO 9000 nor ISO 9001, neither one of them draws any particular distinction between how to classify your processes. But this is something that we see often, having key or core processes and then support items. Now, unfortunately, because some organizations own their core activities, the support processes end up getting left off of the IOP. So what do we mean by support processes? Well, things like management review, things like internal auditing, training, corrective action, things that are contributors to your quality system, but they're kind of in the background, aren't they? These are things that support the entirety of the system at large. And they're absolutely subject to audit, of course. So let's apply that improvement to our test model. Okay, so now down here we have a standalone box that's simply called support processes. And what we've done with this is we've said, okay, this area up here, these are the core activities of the system, and these items in here act as a support to the core activities. So very simple fix. We've added a piece, and now support processes have their proper place on the IOP. Now the other improvement that we're going to do is we're going to create an IOP key. We're going to have a key that's going to identify what are these processes. Now you can do this in a number of different ways. You can do this through numbering, through different alpha characters. We're going to use color to reflect what the processes are. Now again, this enables the IOP to stay as is, but it serves your quality system and it serves the audit process by identifying what are the processes that make up this system. So let's apply that additional improvement now to our test model. Okay, so now we've got the same steps that we had 2 slides ago, But now we have an identifier of what are the core and support processes. We have sales order entry in orange, we have purchasing in green, production in yellow, shipping over here in purple, and as it happened, shipping happens to be a standalone process. We have a quality process in red and support in blue. Now we've got something. By making two small adjustments, we've kept the content of the IOP just as it was before, but we know what the processes are, and we now have a reflection of support activity. This is an IOP that is ready for audit assessment. Now obviously there's more than one way to accomplish this, and perhaps we have some folks on the call today that are still developing their quality system. So we want to share with you kind of a wide variety of methods that we have seen and accepted over the years. Now each of these are from actual companies. Each has granted permission for us to use these as part of our presentation. We'll start here. This particular company has a simple flow down model, 7 core processes starting with contracts and ending with shipping, and then over here on the left again our kind of large support process box. This particular company, their IOP is a little bit busier. We have over here we have 6 core activities. You'll note kind of the unique nature of the names that are called out here. We have quoting, work order receiving inspection, overhaul, inventory management. These are not your typical processes. And then over here in the left we have this item that's simply referred to as management related, and we would presume then that these are all of the support activities. This particular model is typically referred to as swim lane. We would look to the left and note that we have 4 core processes called out: sales, purchasing, production, and support. In this instance, we have these steps that start kind of at the same time for sales and purchasing, and then we have a reflection of how all of this kind of meets up with the issuance of the work order and the receiving of purchased items, and that sort of flows into the production process. And then down here we have support, kind of lending full support to the core activities up here. This particular model uses highlighting. In this instance we have 5 core activities, and again, just to point out, you'll note the unique names that are used here: distribution, service exchange, and then our more typical sales order entry and purchasing. And they've indicated with this that anything that isn't highlighted is support. So therefore we have 6 items altogether. We have 5 core processes and then a cumulative support activity. So in conclusion, we want to make sure that we're providing you with a value-added audit and meeting all applicable requirements. We do hope that the points of this presentation will be helpful to you in developing an even better understanding of what your processes are. I do thank you for your time, and at this time I will unlock the question portion of the dashboard. I'll be glad to answer any questions that anyone has. Any questions today? Okay. Oh, we have a question from Chris Wallace. Wallace, okay. Or Walls, I'm sorry. Is accounting typically a support process? Great question, Chris. And I presume that you're asking in context of ISO 9001-2015, which of course there are some new requirements pertaining to business processes. Understand a couple of things here. Number one, an organization is permitted to name whatever processes apply to them. Obviously, you have to include your various activities, and those are for you to define. Do we typically dig into the accounting activities in the context of an ISO 9001 audit? No. But whether or not you would consider it a core process or a support process, that would be for you to determine. We've got some questions on access to the slides. They will absolutely be made available for download shortly after we're finished. Just check back on our website and they'll be available shortly. Sarah Forga asks, does only ISO 9001 require process mapping, or does ISO 1345 require it? Sarah, ISO 1345 absolutely requires that you have an understanding of what your processes are. As to whether or not a map is specifically required, that is not something I'm comfortable speaking to. I would request that you check with your 1345 auditor on that. Okay, Narelle Sheth asks, does the auditor require all the processes which we list as a diagram? Not necessarily. You're required to have a firm grasp on what your processes are. Diagrams are the most common way to meet this requirement, but it's not exclusively the only way. If you have something that you can put together that isn't a diagram, that is an effective representation of what your processes are, we would certainly give it consideration and look at it. Okay. Brenda Ben Patra asks, if an organization wants to show his process flowchart along with the support services, is it allowed? Again, Brenda Ben, what's required is that you have a firm statement of what your processes are. If support services is reflected on that, obviously that's appropriate. Okay. Layla Nasonbeth asks, does the IOP reflect audits in AS 9100? I do know that AS 9100 requires that you identify your processes, and an IOP is absolutely a part of the current requirements for AS 9100. I know there's a new version of that standard coming out, which I am not personally privy to. Okay. Brendan Ban Patra asks, if any organization maintains a quality manual, are there any restrictions? A quality manual is mandatory in ISO 9001-2008. It is optional in ISO 9001-2015. The requirements for the quality manual in 9001-2008 can be found in clause 4.2.2. Any further questions today? Okay, thank you all for your time, and have a great day.